Today's morning coffee vinyl side. Jim Byrnes, Burning, 1981. Today is Friday, and that means it's time for another Vancouver Van-Tastic Vinyl selection. We're spinning the 1981 debut LP of Vancouver-based Jim Byrnes, actor and voice actor, man about town, and bluesman extraordinaire. If you lived in Vancouver any time through the late 80s or 90s, into the 2000s and beyond, and you watched Canadian television or locally shot American television shows, then you know Jim Byrnes. Fondly remembered for his character Lifeguard in the crime drama series Wiseguy, and most famous for his role as Watcher Joe Dawson in the locally shot Highlander the series, Jim was and is a go-to character actor for untold number of film and television productions shot around the city. The St. Louis-born Jim Byrnes came to Canada in 1969 after serving a tour of duty in Vietnam and manning an army recruiting center on his return. Disillusioned with the political climate in the USA, and with the risk of being returned to Vietnam for a second tour high, Jim made his way to Vancouver Island, taking up a vagabond lifestyle when, at the age of 23, he was struck by a vehicle at the side of the island highway, a horrible, life-threatening accident that resulted in the loss of both of his legs. I can hardly imagine the challenge of trying to come back from such a catastrophic injury, both mind and body, and the fact that Jim has thrived and is still here today after all these years is a tribute to his incredible fortitude and will. Remarkably, this album comes 8 or 9 years after the accident, and one can surmise that music and the blues played a significant role in Jim's recovery, and what an album it is. Recorded and mixed at Blue Wave Recorders, then at 2182 West 12th by Powder Blues Band founder and studio owner Tom Lavin and Mark Hasselback. Burning is a phenomenal uptown blues album with horns and swing and a whole lot of Vancouver luminaries offering contributions, and of course at the heart of it all, the incomparable Jim Byrnes. A look at the jacket reveals Cat Hendricks on drums. You'll remember him as a session drummer that played on Hart's Dreamboat Annie. I see and hear the Lavin brothers and the rest of the early 80s Powder Blues Band roster, in many ways making this album Jim Byrnes with the Powder Blues. But a little deeper dig reveals names like Jane Mortefi and Prism's Lindsay Mitchell, and Skylark founding member, the late Robbie King, who got his start with the legendary Vancouver band Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers, playing the Hammond organ. I also see Vancouver jazz and blues vocal powerhouse Gail Bowen, and Seattle's veritable 70s house band Kid Africa, along with a few others. What emerges as we peel back the layers is how infused with care and goodwill this project was, as if created in the love embrace of the whole Vancouver music community. And engineering credits go to Vancouver grindstone Brian Campbell, who went on to be a freelance engineer operating out of Little Mountain Sound before joining Airwave Sound Design, then Sharp Sound Studios, where he worked freelance in post-production until fairly recently. This album sounds good. Great, even. It's top shelf in terms of production and polish. And if you're thinking that Jim's accident would have driven him deep into the bluest blue of the blues, that he'd be a tortured artist who achieves catharsis through laments and wails, well, you'd be totally wrong. This is happy blues. This is good time blues. a little T-Birds mixed with a whole lot of Chicago and uptown, and I find that remarkable. Now, followers of the channel, and those astute with noticing the change in my voice, will note that I suffered my own near-death experience very recently after complications from a routine surgery resulted in the need for life-saving intervention. I went from feeling fine to fighting for my life as an arterial bleed in my neck post-surgery collapsed my airway. I had minutes to face the reality that I was dying. Now here I am, 9 days later. The crisis is over, my body and mind healing from the trauma. But I can't imagine the suffering that Jim must have endured relative to my fleeting brush with life and death. But beyond the suffering, it's the duration and distance of the road traveled from the side of the Island Highway in 1972 to Tom Lavin's Blue Wave recorders in 1981 that interests me the most. There's a story there for sure. A story of resilience and perseverance, of earned respect and friendship. A story that, when distilled, produced this album. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're going to do a Vancouver Van-Tastic Vinyl selection every Friday. And certainly you're welcome to follow our daily posts where we spin albums from the collection of cast-offs and left-behinds that you might not find on other music channels. But by all means, check out Jim Byrnes. Dig for his catalog. Look for his story. He's one of our city's greatest treasures.